Tonight, we return to the quiet halls of Stanford University, a place known for research and brilliance, but forever shadowed by a crime so chilling, so ritualistic, that for more than 4 decades it lived in campus folklore like a whispered legend. This is the story of Arlis K. Perry, a 19-year-old newlywed, a devoted Christian, and a young woman searching for peace in a new city. A woman who walked into Stanford Memorial Church late at night and was found there at dawn, posed, violated, and murdered in a way investigators had never seen before. Tonight, in a gentle whisper, we retrace her steps. We move through the investigation, the rumors, the secrecy, and the final shocking breakthrough that came 44 years later. Arlis grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, a quiet Midwestern life, filled with church, family, and simple routines. People described her as gentle, devout, and always smiling. In August of 1974, she married her high school sweetheart, Bruce Perry. Just 2 months into their marriage, Arlis moved with Bruce to California, where he had begun studying at Stanford. She worked as a receptionist, making new friends slowly, adjusting to life far from home. On October 12th, 1974, the night everything changed. Arlis and Bruce had what Bruce later called a small marital disagreement. Nothing explosive, just the normal growing pains of newlyweds. Arlis said she wanted to take a walk to cool down and maybe stop by the church to pray. Bruce watched her leave their apartment around 11:30 p.m. It was the last time he ever saw her alive. A security guard reported seeing Arlis heading toward Memorial Church shortly before midnight. 2 students saw her go inside. The massive wooden doors swung closed behind her, and silence filled the sanctuary. Bruce went to sleep, assuming she'd return shortly, but when he woke up around 3 a.m. and realized she wasn't home, panic crept in. He called campus security. They checked nearby buildings, but the church was locked tight. They assumed she had stayed overnight with a friend. They didn't know Arlis was only a few feet away, inside the church, already dead. Just before 6 a.m., campus security guard Stephen Crawford unlocked the church for the morning. He stepped inside, expecting stillness. What he found was something he would later describe only as disturbing. Arlis's body was lying in the east transept, a quiet alcove near the altar. She was positioned on her back, arms folded across her chest as if in prayer. But her clothing had been removed and arranged purposefully. A large altar candle had been placed between her breasts. Her jeans were draped across her legs. Another long candle was inserted vaginally, and an ice pick, still lodged in her skull, had delivered the fatal blow. There was no sign of robbery, no sign of forced entry, only careful, chilling staging, as if the killer wanted the scene to say something. Investigators quickly realized this was not a simple assault. It was deliberate. They found semen on a kneeling pillow nearby, a partial palm print on one of the candles, no fingerprints on the ice pick. The killer wiped it clean. No signs of struggle, meaning Arlis may never have seen the killer coming. The ice pick, notably, did not belong to the church. Arlis hadn't owned one either. Someone brought it with them. To police, that meant premeditation. But 1974 forensics had limits. No DNA testing, no high-res fingerprint databases. Pieces of the puzzle sat there, waiting for technology that didn't exist yet. Naturally, Bruce Perry, the husband, was questioned first. But the timeline and his full cooperation cleared him. Another figure stood out, Stephen Blake Crawford, the security guard who found the body. He gave inconsistent statements about when he checked the church, whether doors were locked, and who else he had seen that night. But without physical evidence, police couldn't act. Other suspects floated in and out, a drifter, a student, a religious extremist. None matched the limited forensic clues. And so the case, slowly, slipped into the cold files. By the late 1970s, the rumor mill exploded. The strange staging of Arlis's body made many speculate about ritualistic killing. Some tied it to satanic groups, others to fringe religious circles. Even The Son of Sam Letters, written by David Berkowitz, mentioned groups on the West Coast. This fed sensational theories that Arlis was targeted by a cult, but investigators later dismissed these links. There was no credible evidence tying Arlis to any occult group, and Berkowitz was known to fabricate stories to gain attention. Still, the rumors stuck, and the case gained a near-mythic status. For more than 40 years, Arlis's murder sat unsolved. Her family returned to North Dakota, grieving in private. Bruce Perry continued his studies and later became a well-known psychiatrist. Stanford students whispered about the case as part of campus legend, a reminder that even sacred spaces can hold dark secrets. But investigators never forgot her. They protected the original evidence, knowing one day science might catch up. In the 2010s, forensic technology finally offered hope. Cold case detectives retrieved the preserved semen sample and palm print. DNA testing had improved dramatically. Even degraded samples were now testable. By 2018, the results came back. The DNA profile matched one name, Stephen Blake Crawford, the same security guard who claimed to discover her body. He had been there that night, alone, accessing locked buildings, and now his DNA sat at the center of the crime scene. The case had finally broken open. On June 28, 2018, detectives arrived at Crawford's apartment with a warrant. They knocked on the door, announced themselves, and waited. Crawford stepped into the room holding a gun. Before officers could react, he turned the weapon on himself and pulled the trigger. He died instantly. Police later announced publicly that DNA tied him to Arlis's murder. There would never be a trial. No confession. No explanation for the scene he created. Only the silence he left behind. With Crawford's DNA confirmed, investigators officially closed the case. For Arlis's family, the answers came painfully late, but at last they had a name and an end to the speculation. Her murder is now taught in criminology courses as an example of how meticulous evidence preservation can solve a case almost half a century later, and how secrets, even ones hidden in sacred places, eventually come to light. Tonight we honored the memory of Arlis Perry, a young woman who sought comfort in a church, and whose story reminds us how fragile life is. If this chapter moved you, and if you'd like to hear more whispered true crime stories, please subscribe and let your voice join ours in the quiet. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Good night.